Hi, it's Caneel Joyce. Welcome to Aloud. Thank you so much for returning today. If you're a new listener, thank you for joining us. Today's a bit of an unusual episode. I'm going to drop you right in where I began recording today with a friend and a colleague, Christine Owenell, and you'll just drop right into our conversation right where I hit record. Here we go.
Aloud.
Honestly, I can't believe I made it here. Yeah.
If we're being really honest right now.
I was literally fighting a wild beast. My puppy, is like growing so fast. He's becoming so strong. And while I was walking him before I left for this, he snapped his leash because he's like so pent up with energy. He's used to going into work with Roy every day where there's tons of dogs and running around and walking all day. And he's stuck in the house and we're basically trying to ignore him while we do homeschooling. He is, I was like,
Sounds like a recipe for success.
So, staked him down. Yeah.
Great learning.
Oh my gosh. It's so good. It's so good right now. Yeah. Okay. Well, Christine,
Yes.
Hello, audience. This is Caneel Joyce. Welcome to Aloud. Here we are today on day 6 of homeschooling for me. And I think for many of us, and some of you are just getting started. We are recording this episode on March 20th, Friday, March 20th. Yesterday, Governor Gavin Newsom of California asked all Californians to stay at home. And I know that a lot of the Bay Area is actually on shelter in place warnings. We don't know what the future holds. And so each of the episodes that we are recording during this time of crisis, each of these episodes of Aloud is here to give you further permission to milk this experience for all that it has got for you, to approach it as a leader, to approach it as a learner, to approach it as a lover. And today on the show, we have the beautiful Christine Owenell, who I fell in love with the moment I met her. You remember that, Christine?
I do.
She is, she feels like a person that I've always been meant to meet and be with. And I was so lucky when she came into my life. We met through evolution, and she's here today to talk to us about the alchemy of chaos, which is something that we're all getting to experience now. So, like I said, these episodes are a little different. We're doing this in a very conversational way. We're bringing the content that is emerging within each of us, and our commitment to you is that this content will be relevant regardless of what is happening in the world around you, regardless of where we are with regard to this current situation. And if you listen to this 2 hours later and we're living in a radically different world, or perhaps things have returned to the old normal, either way, this is about leadership. And COVID is really presenting us with a lot of opportunities to learn about leadership in a more kind of extreme learning situation than we may have had the opportunity to go through before. So without further ado, I want to introduce Christine Owenell. Christine Owenell is a partner in evolution and the founder of the Owenell Global Consultancy. Christine is an executive coach, a teamwork facilitator, a purpose economist, a cosmic mystic, and a mother. And Christine's work supports positive behavioral change through experimental strategies and elevating self-awareness. Her clients include Slack, Vanderbilt, Ticketmaster, Radiology Partners, Northwestern Mutual, Commonwealth Bank of Australia, and many, many more. And she also specializes in wealth consciousness and coaches high net worth individuals. Now, how did she get connected with them? Well, a little bit about her background there. So in her early career, she was in academia as a Clinton scholar and then began doing research in hostage negotiation and counterintelligence, which led her to living on 4 different continents, being the senior vice president of a $1 billion investment firm. And through all of this, she was tracking this fascination she has with the psychology of the human condition and how elements of our mindset impact our magnetism and our impact. So really excited to have this brilliant, worldly mind on the show today. And for those who don't know, we also have a video posted for you at caneel.com/podcast. Christine, thank you so much for being here on the show with us today.
Hi, thank you so much, Caneel. I also fell in love with you minute one. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, me too. I love your glowing, beautiful face. And
Thank you.
Listeners, if you're listening to this in podcast format, you can also watch the video. We're posting a link to that at caneel.com/podcast. So Christine, what's going on in your world today? You want to check in?
Yes, let's do a check-in.
Okay.
You think a 2-minute check-in?
Perfect.
2-minute check-in. Okay. Mm-hmm. I am checking in today with a sense of calm, and it's almost a feeling of exhilaration. And it's like I keep second guessing myself. Ever since this started to pick up speed, this has kind of been my baseline general mood. And I had this voice in my head saying, you clearly aren't in touch, Christine. If you can feel invigorated and in living in this possibility and feel strong and grounded, then you're not paying attention. But I think that today I'm going to check in and own how I feel. It feels, even with the work from home, this is day Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Day 7 of level 5 isolation, no one in, no one out of our house. We've gotten all of our groceries delivered. We've been ordering packages for things that we need. And it even in that, and we have 2 young kids. We have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old who we normally have childcare for. And our 3-year-old normally at Montessori school. So it's been a huge renegotiation of just the way that we live our day-to-day life. And at this point, we're finding a really surprising and unexpected cadence of what feels very peaceful. And so, yeah, I'm checking in present to the reality that I'm currently in, despite the chaotic nature of panic and death and suffering and destruction and companies shutting down and all of it. And I think it's possible to hold both. So that's still the question that I'm asking myself. What does it look like for me to hold both of those things? Stay grounded in the reality of the real suffering that's happening, and also stay grounded in the reality of possibility that I feel in every bone in my body. With that, I'm in.
Welcome, Christine.
Thank you.
I'm really excited to have you here today and just to be with you in general. So I'm checking in. This is, as I said, it's day 6 of homeschool. It's day 3 of no shower. It's not essential. It's just not an essential for me right now. I think that tonight it will be. But I've definitely felt very called forth by this. I've also felt like disaster readiness is in my DNA. I found myself thrilled by the opportunity to homeschool my kids, which I remember a year ago sharing with my coaching group, a group where I'm a recipient of the coaching, sharing with them that one of my goals for having a big 2020, so we were doing kind of like a year ahead visioning. One of my goals for that was to have enough patience and resilience that I could homeschool my own kids. And I remember a lot of the guys there who know me really well saying, they were saying, I'm just asking myself if that's realistic, Caneel. And I think you might be like really overextended, because the number of things on this list, big things, it was a pretty big list, but I also felt like, no, but this truly is my goal. I would like to have the patience that I could, if that were something that became necessary, or if we wanted to go live in the mountains for a year and slow down the pace of our life. And so while, my emotions have been up and down here and there, sometimes more, I've also just felt all of the creativity of this moment. I've really been feeling into this role that I'm in as a woman in my house and a woman in society and in my kid's life, and the difference between what it is that I'm being asked to do now versus what my husband's being asked to do. Really working through a lot of resistance, trying to find peace around that, and feeling very powerful as a mom. And my kids, even though I can tell they're adjusting and there's some challenges to it, they are still saying how happy they are to get to have me as their teacher. Which is, you wouldn't know sometimes from the looks on their faces, but it's really nice to hear those words every now and then. So I'm feeling like in general, this era is asking all of us to grapple with reality and responsibility and opportunity. So yeah, chaos, it's here. Let's dig in. You shared with me right before this call that this new idea came to you in the COVID era about the alchemy of chaos. And you've actually got a program that you've designed already.
Yes, it's just flowing through me. It's just like, I feel like I'm just stuck into this inspiration flow. And when I think I'm out, it's not. It just keeps going. So yeah, this group coaching program has come through just in the last 48 hours.
I really want to hear about the program. First, let's hear about the kind of bedrock of it, this idea that came to you, this phrase, alchemy of chaos. What does that mean to you?
I love the word alchemy. I always have. The word alchemy means a seemingly magical process of transformation. And it also can mean a process of creation. So I love those two words as well. Transformation and creation is something that we talk about a lot in what we do. And the alchemical reality that we have on our hands, and why I love the word alchemy so much, is it's this notion of taking what is, like taking what is in our hands that might feel like coal and alchemizing it to gold, taking the poison and alchemizing it into elixir, taking a virus and alchemizing it into global health, whatever that looks like. And taking all of the challenges that are being presented to leaders in any capacity right now on various levels, but alchemizing this immense shared global challenge of leadership and alchemizing it into perhaps rewriting the playbook of the way that we have led from the past up until now. And I think that it's important to talk about the word chaos with that, and almost like put chaos on a pedestal instead of saying this is chaos and looking at it as this awful thing. To me, if we can shift the frame and the lens on the opportunity that chaos truly does present, then it's kind of, that's that first step of really turning to face what is, which right now is global chaos within a pandemic. So yeah, that's the title, The Alchemy of Chaos.
It is a beautiful title. And this idea, you're reminding me a lot when I think of the idea of holding the coal and alchemizing it into gold. This is a lot of how I think about working with shadow. And we had on the podcast, I believe it was actually episode 2, we had Luke Entrup on the podcast talking about shadow.
Luke.
Yeah, me too. And the idea of shadow is that within us, there are these unclaimed parts, the parts of ourselves that we deny, we reject, we disown. We essentially claim that's not me, that's out there. That's you, that's them, that's other, that doesn't even exist. And a lot of the work that we do in our coaching work, I know that we share this, is we help people to excavate that shadow and raise it up and look at it and say, look at the jewels that are here. Look at these gifts that you have, you were taught at some point we're not allowed and that we're not here to serve you. And then, when we have that kind of negative point of view about parts of ourself, those pieces of ourself become reactive. They become out of control. They work against us. They work against what's of service, but because we're in denial of them. But when we hold them up and we look at them, that's when we can find the gift in each of them. So when I'm hearing you talk about alchemizing, I'm hearing about finding the gift in the thing without denying the reality of the thing.
Yes.
Transforming it. Mm-hmm. And I also can imagine that many of our listeners, as a listener, I might myself, depending on what's happening in that day, have a lot of resistance to this idea that we can take something as traumatizing and challenging and unfair as COVID and turn it into something positive. This might feel really insensitive almost. And I'm wondering, how do we hold both? How do we hold both of these ideas that there is suffering happening and it's maybe even happening to us, and yet there's something good here without feeling like we're kind of out of allegiance or like in denial? Yeah. How do we do that?
I love that question. I have so many things that I want to say about that. And I want to name first that what you just said is a lot of where my self-doubt has come from in the past week, and like feeling these feelings at the same time as all of the suffering is happening. It's, my voice says, you're out of touch. You aren't aware of what's really going on. But I think that it's my expanded awareness of what is going on and my being with it that actually is allowing this opening to happen. 2019 was it was one of the most devastating years personally that I've ever faced. And my normal Christine in 2018 would have, I made up this phrase for myself. I coined it for me. It's like, I would come in and rainbow wash everything for most of my life. I'm like, positive thinking, we can do this. Like, that's not as bad as you say. Look at this frame. Like, look at it this way. And
you're such an Enneagram 7.
It's such a 7. And I was completely missing the point. And I think like devaluing the value of recognizing the suffering in ourselves and others. And what 2019 gave me, it didn't feel like a gift at the time, was the capacity to sit in the sludge of the suffering, personal and collective. And it was only after I opened to what was happening, as opposed to trying to like morph it into something positive prematurely and like look for the silver lining before the silver lining was even there. It was only after I was forced, because believe me, I tried to get out of this a million different ways, to sit in it and sit with it. That's when everything just opened up. And it feels like that was like a training ground for me for this moment. It's like, I feel the suffering. I fully acknowledge it. I read about it. I'm not oblivious, and I'm not trying to rainbow wash the reality of the situation. I think that it's like my deep appreciation of the reality of the situation that's allowing me to have the energy that I do to have a conversation about what it can mean for us personally and collectively.
What I'm hearing from that, absolutely. I mean, what I'm hearing is, 2019 presented you with all these challenges, and we talk on this show a lot about the change formula. And, in order to change, we need to have either enough vision or enough discomfort, plus enough support to be able to overcome our natural state, which is resisting change. And it was only really, I heard you say that word forced. I was forced to acknowledge that there is suffering, forced to be with the downsides of things in order to have this opening. And this opening actually sounds like it's integration for you.
Yeah.
You're integrating that the shadowy parts of the optimistic, energetic type 7 who wants to rainbow wash things prematurely, as you put it. I love that. And combining it with, the maturity of the evolved piece that can say, there's an opportunity actually to use that for good, so long as I am not in denial of reality.
Yes.
Yeah.
Beautifully said. There's an opportunity to use this for good, so long as, and that being in denial of reality, or so long as we're not in denial of reality, that is the key, because none of the other things are going to land if that piece isn't there. It's essential.
The role of the conscious leader. This is, speaking of things that get channeled to you in the midst of chaos like this, one of the things that came to me on day one as I was beginning to coach my CEOs is that the role of the conscious leader here, which is something we need to ask every person to do, not just our CEOs, is threefold. One, it's to face reality, like to be with reality. Two, to hold multiple realities, to hold infinite realities. There are so many different true experiences of the same exact phenomenon happening right now. And then three is to create reality. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what your alchemy is about.
Absolutely. What you said about facing reality and embracing reality, what came up for me when you said that is this opportunity that we have that's unavoidable, that we're having to do that in the world, and our ability to do that with ourselves, mm-hmm. and have that understanding of ourselves, facing the reality of ourselves. I don't think it's any coincidence that there are countrywide orders from government to go home, be with your family, be still, rest, look, be with what is. There's nothing out there in the world for you right now. And
Holy
maybe
moly.
there never was. You know what I mean? So it's like, as we are coming home, mm-hmm. we are coming home. Mm-hmm. And from that place of being with the reality of what is inwardly and in our family zone, it is then that we'll be able to powerfully create that reality in our companies and in society and in the world at large. There's no coincidences for me in all of this. There's so many mirrors.
Oh, I love these layers.
Yeah.
So starting in the home might be an interesting way to look at this, or even starting in the self, but that can feel a little bit abstract. I'm just wondering, how are you doing this for yourself right now? How are you alchemizing chaos in your home? Can we start there?
Yes. Well, I first had to alchemize it in myself. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. How do you do that?
Those moments, when I start to feel those moments, especially early on. And I also would like to note that I was one of the people at the beginning of this thing. I've changed my mind 50 million times. I think like as information comes in, but I was in denial of reality. Mm-hmm. At the beginning, I was like, it's a flu. Come on. Like, I'm going to go to New York anyway. I was in New York City last week. I mean, what? You know what I mean? So I was like, oh, it's fine. Mm-hmm. And it was not fine. And it was only after I was able to open to the dissonance of my own behaviors, my own actions, my own assumptions, that then that chaos feeling came within myself. And the way that I faced that was first of all, I forgave the parts of me that I was judging for not knowing what I didn't know, all of that. And then I had a writing practice where it's just stream of consciousness, and I just write what feels true, and name as much of it as possible. Name as many of the voices as I could that were unhelpful. Name all of the things. And I love that phrase, name it to tame it. Once we can name it, we can work with it. So before naming it, it feels like this nebulous black swirly cloud that feels like chaos. And I created a practice of understanding myself in the context of me, through writing, through naming, through thinking, through being still. And then it was like the house and I haven't thought about this until this moment, but it was like the home, as soon as I did that, it was like, I had a direct influence. It was my way of being that was creating this feeling of craziness.
The frenetic feeling.
Yeah. And the second I settled that in myself, my children, you know, they're still so small, like they're immediate instant mirrors for anything that's happening with me. And they were good. And my husband and I have just like settled into this pattern of supporting each other and being there for each other and trading off. And it's like, hey, I have a call. Can you take the kids? Hey, this is actually urgent. Da, da, da. I know you had this thing and you're going to do your admin, blah, 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 blah. And then it's like checking in. We have our own little day. You know, it's like, I have an interview at this time. I have a client call at this time. Those are uninterruptible times, but anything else, come grab me. And he's like, okay, yeah, I have to address this. And after that, I'm good. And
That's
it's
awesome.
just been this really incredible experience of the possibility of, we keep calling it team family. Like we're just team family existing in our home for however long it is. And yeah, it doesn't feel chaotic in our home right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now I'm wondering about the metaphor of Diego's leash snapping for myself.
Ooh.
I'm breaking free, y'all. I'm running wild. Can't hold me down.
Yes. Totally.
I've always been a leash snapper.
Yes. It's like you were channeling the energy that you actually feel, and
Totally.
Diego was picking up on that. It wasn't
dogs
about him at all.
Dogs are total mirrors.
Yes.
They totally are. Oh my gosh.
Truly. That's amazing. I can't
wait for him to start humping his pillow or doing something else more fun.
Yeah. And you're like, where's that mirroring?
Oh, mercy. So let's talk. I want to talk about naming. This is a thing that I feel like is a little bit of coach speak, and we use it often, and I love it.
Yeah.
And I want to break it down for our listeners. So on this show, sometimes we actually coach live our listeners right in the here and now. So imagine that we've got a listener who's doing the dishes, walking their dog, up in the middle of the night listening to the show, brushing their teeth, whatever it is. I wonder, Christine, could you give them a 1 to 2 minute kind of live coaching experience, ask them some questions, help them to feel a little bit what this feels like for you, this writing process of naming all the things?
I would ask that person to think about, or ideally write down 10 things that feel the most true. Just the first things that come out of your brain, whether it's an assertion about something or a question or an I am statement, just to get in that flow of being able to, and that's a version of naming, just naming what's true in this moment. And then I would look at that list and read it over, and whichever item creates a reaction, or there's a charge, and so what that can feel like is maybe your stomach turning over, or you feel like a heat wave or a chill bump wave, or even just the slightest, it can be subtle, just a subtle reaction to it of any kind. And then I would take that and be in inquiry about that. And so I love to, especially when something feels really heavy, because that it might be a lot of heaviness that people are feeling right now, especially with uncertainty and doubt and future tripping and all of that. The heavier it is, the more curious and playful the more helpful curiosity and playfulness will be. So pulling out that one thing that you're going to be an inquiry around, and there are questions that can be asked about that. Where is this coming from? What am I making this mean? Yeah. If this is true, what am I making this mean? And whatever the answer to that is, where do I feel that in my body? And then wherever that is, drop in and what does it feel like? And it's amazing how quickly we can reduce the tension that we feel towards ourselves, towards situation, towards another person, just by going through this process of being with it. And it's a metaphor for what we were talking about before, is our capacity to be with what is. It just melts. It just melts into us. And I love when you use the word integration, Caneel, because I think that integration is the key. It's like, it's not being in resistance of something that feels uncomfortable. whether that's on a micro scale or a macro scale. It's like the ability to involve it in ourselves, to make it part of us, instead of like try and like get over it or move through it or see it as an obstacle that we leave in our past. Like, what if every obstacle that we faced was actually this gift, and we were being invited to make it part of ourselves and therefore become bigger, you know, therefore become stronger, not leave it behind. Like, that's a valuable sapphire in the road that looks like a giant boulder. Like, take it with you, put it in your bag, you know? So this is a version of that, just with the soft skill.
It's beautiful. And, you know, I sometimes when I guide leaders through this, like if I'm doing an offsite and I'm having them do some free writing, I might throw out a bunch of prompts like you just did, like, and then you ask this, and then you ask this, and then you go into the body, and what does that mean? How am I making it mean? And sometimes I get the question, wait, so what do I do now? What do I do? Am I doing it right? And I just want to give all of you listeners just the total freedom. I mean, like Christine named this exercise free writing for a reason. And there's truly no right or wrong place to go with this. And I know that Christine and I are both huge fans of The Artist's Way.
Yes.
Which, if there's ever been a time to do The Artist's Way, it is right now. People, pick
Please.
it up. Julia Cameron. It is one of the best experiences, books that I've ever come across. Life-changing, so magical, so simple. So in The Artist's Way, Julia advocates for you, like as one of your basic practices, every morning, first thing when you wake up, when you're still groggy, before you do anything else, you free write 3 pages. And I love this. This is such a simple technique that you just advocated of just name 10 things that are true. And from there, the number of questions we can ask about those things is infinite. But the point is that you take it where it leads you, right? You take it where it leads you and be with it rather than trying to solve it. So being in inquiry is this practice of actually sitting in the question and being the question rather than needing to answer the question.
Yes, that's such a key. There is no answer.
There is none. And when you get busy trying to find answers or solve it, you leave presence. It doesn't mean there's not answers that will come. It doesn't mean there's not questions that are important to answer. But when we have an unanswerable on our hands, facing the reality of that means being in the question, not making the question go away. So Christine, as you're describing this thing about everything is for me, and can I kind of wrap myself around the discomfort of something, without resisting it in my life and in my body and in my mind, what I instantly thought of is the training ground I had for that kind of a practice was childbirth. And the way that I approached birth, and I know we've chatted about this before, was, I happened to do, I was lucky enough, I got to do a natural home birth. And I had prepared with some self-hypnosis practices, which truly do work and are, scientifically validated. And there's no right or wrong way to do birth. Like, birth is a miracle, however you slice it. I just want to give total space for that. But the way that they put a lot of attention on how you talk about what's happening. So instead of calling it a contraction, they name it a pressure wave. And what I love about that is, instead of it, so the contraction, if you look at physiologically what happens in the body in birth, the womb is actually trying to open by kind of sucking up on the top and expanding on the bottom. So there's 2 different kinds of muscles. It's not trying to contract and close down. And when we hear that word contraction, our body is going to try to contract around, and that actually, the resistance is the pain. The resistance is the pain. Pressure wave acknowledges that there is a pressure that is the pushing down of a baby out of your body by your own body. And it works like a wave. It ramps up and then it ramps back down. And so what they teach you to do is to actually like feel it like a nice deep hug, like a big strong hug. And so you're supposed to like just loosen everything to experience the warmth and love of that big strong hug. Now, for those who didn't have a similar experience, I know I've heard a lot of resistance around this, just me even talking about this. It's totally okay if you think I'm bananas. I'm not. It's
I don't
true.
think you're bananas.
It was my truth.
Aligned with everything. This is my truth as well.
This is your truth?
Oh,
this was your experience?
Absolutely. Yes. When it's like, I can remember feeling the difference in the middle of birthing my second child specifically. We did a home birth. And, I remember the more I would say yes, as the pressure wave was happening, I was saying thank you while the wave was happening. And it was like my mantra. Thank you. Yes. Thank you. Instead of like counting.
Yeah, that's so good.
And when I would not say that, when I would get overwhelmed with one, it's kind of like if you get behind it, if it kind of gets you, then you're getting through it. So the next one, and then you get back on top of it. Of the cadence. But I felt the difference when I was in resistance to it. It hurt so much more. And when I was saying the yes and thank you, I could feel my body opening. It's like I could feel the movement. And yes, the resistance is what causes the pain. And there's such a metaphor.
Such a metaphor.
Yeah.
Oh, women are so magical.
Yes, we are.
So my mantra was open.
Open.
I read that word, I think thank you and open, like they both are like, kind of words. Your mouth is literally open. And okay, we're about to get real, guys. There's a thing called sphincter law.
Love this law. This is a fantastic law.
Tell us about it.
Well, so in biology, the biology of our body, the sphincter of, is it our throat? Is directly connected to the sphincter of the opening of the uterus where the baby comes through. And so they do the same thing. They mirror each other. So if you're not opening in your throat by like expressing and vocalizing, or just like visualizing that that sound that you just made, then everything's closed. If one thing's open, the second thing's open.
Yes. All the sphincters work together.
Did I do that in a PC enough way?
Totally. Definitely. Yeah. So, what are the lessons of that for us here? Certainly resisting what's happening is going to increase your suffering. That seems clear. Including resisting your own resistance, I want to say, which is sort of meta.
Yeah, that is meta and also important to note.
I mean, I noticed last night I was beginning to panic myself. I was feeling anxious. Like the reality of being closed in, and what it might mean was I was feeling a little sense of panic about groceries and, things that I actually am prepared for, but was spinning on it. And I felt myself, I felt my body get anxious. And then I said to myself, being anxious isn't going to help. And then I got anxious about being anxious.
Right.
I was meta anxious. And as soon as I said, okay, I'm anxious right now, what does an anxious person do to calm themselves down? Versus I shouldn't be an anxious person. Instead, what does an anxious person do? Well, they take a bath, they do deep breathing. That's not working for me right now. They distract themselves. I'm like, okay, distract myself from reality. Is that really the conscious thing to do? And I'm like, well, yeah, because reality is I'm anxious right now. So I'm going to read some comedy. And so I downloaded a David Sedaris book. I began reading. I emerged and I was ready to be with my family and give them lots of love and have patience and all of the things that were really the things I was scared I was going to lose to begin with by being anxious. So I think there's being with what is such a massively encompassing concept.
Yeah.
And it gives you permission to not have anything be wrong while it's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
So chaos. Let's talk about chaos, because I think this is totally where we're pointing here in this conversation and in the world. Can you give us, how do we actually alchemize chaos here? Like, let's speak to our leaders in the audience.
Mm-hmm.
There are lots of forms of chaos happening in our organizations. People are being laid off, which is a very difficult thing to do for a leader at this time, and a very difficult thing to hear for anyone at this time. We're seeing massive changes to the way that we have to operate as businesses on a day-by-day basis. Things are changing. While at the same time, every individual has had a lot of new demands put on them. And it's so much uncertainty. Janet was on the show a couple of days ago, our partner Janet, and was talking about that this is VUCA time. It's volatile, uncertain, what was the C? Chaotic and ambiguous. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how do we actually do this as leaders? How do we help our organizations alchemize chaos?
Yeah, I think this is a really big question and a really important one. And I also think that it's a question that doesn't have one answer. It doesn't even have 100 right answers. This is one of those questions where there might be 1,000 right answers depending on the circumstance. And I'm hesitant to say that because I don't want to sound like it's a cop-out, but there are so many specific circumstances that require, as we were talking about before, the presence. And if I were to give one piece of invitation for leaders right now, I'm going to start meta and go into a more detailed example. But it's like this concept of us resisting reality. We're resisting what is. But everything, every possibility is found right now. So if you're resisting what is, you can't access what is, which is then the key to the next step. I would say in leadership, even though it's so hard, and I know that this is going to be very unconventional advice, but I would ask leaders to consider not over strategizing and not trying to plan too far in the future into a future that none of us know. There is no playbook for this for any of us. Like, no one knows what to do right now. And trying to be a leader pretending like you do is going to keep you way out of presence. And if you're out of presence, you won't be able to access what the next right step is. And I think that that's the mantra for everyone right now is, what is the next right step? Drop in, be present, whether it's the death of a loved one, devastating and shocking, especially given the scenario, whether it's reckoning with the existence of these issues that are arising from the fold of this that no one knows how to handle. Like, what are all of the kids doing that rely on school meals to not go hungry, and now there's no school? Like, what does that even mean? All of it's the people that are getting laid off, the companies that are shutting their doors. It's like, yes, this is happening. And what is here for me now? What is here for me now? Maybe it's even in this conversation that I'm having with someone that I'm having to lay off. And it's the most unimaginably horrible circumstance because they have 6 kids at home and a partner that doesn't work. And what do you say? There's nothing to say. There's nothing to do other than be with each other. And I'm trying to, like, not critique myself as I talk to be too aloof with this. Because I know that there are so many layers of circumstances that people are dealing with right now. And they'll be like, yeah, but what about? And I think that I still am going with just my intuitive center right now. and invite anyone that's thinking that right now to say, yes, and what is here for me right now?
Mm-hmm. It's such an important question. It's such an important question. And the for me piece of it is, I want to talk about that piece a little bit, that there's something here for me right now. There's something here for us right now.
For
It's
us.
operating for us. It's operating for me. What is it? And so instantly, especially in a time where you're feeling challenged, the only way to answer that question is to get super curious. So I have a client who works in one of our nation's largest providers of food, served meals, and that's what she's in charge of. And today we had a coaching session. We chose to not do it because she's suddenly been told that they're not going to be serving food anymore. And so what does it look like inside of an organization as that is happening? It looks like a lot of people scrambling to find something to be right about, something to be in control of. And there's such a difference between being right about something that's just a story versus being connected to the reality of what is true right now. When you talked about there's nothing for us to do except for be with each other, homeschooling is very much on my mind and what it's like to mother right now. And I keep trying to remind myself that in a year, when my kids look back on this time, regardless of their standing academically, I want them to remember how much stronger our relationship became, how much they learned about themselves, how much they grew. And I don't want them to remember me being really attached to a preconceived notion, which, by the way, was handed down to me by another person looking for a right answer. The school districts are really trying hard right now to give people a sense of control. But me holding on to that schedule so rigidly, which is what I notice I start edging towards as I become more stressed, right? It's like I'm just trying to reconnect to this purpose of I'm here to help them see their own gifts in this, help them find their own strength, and help us have stronger relationships. So to me, a lot of the what is true is, what is my highest purpose? And that's like a truth I can hold on to. Mm-hmm. And I can execute on it, or not, without needing to be right about what that ends up looking like, because I can't really plan for it. There is so much chaos.
Yeah. And I think giving ourselves, so well said, all of that, giving ourselves the grace and acknowledgement to allow different things to be true every day. Mm-hmm. To allow ourselves to change our mind and not stick to some other notion of what was true a week ago. Well, yeah, that probably was true a week ago, but now it's now. And mm-hmm. the world is shifting around us at a rapid pace. So instead of coming from a place of, I find that people who are bent on proving their rightness, mm-hmm. Let me prove to you how right I am. Mm-hmm. It usually comes from a place of insecurity, trying to hold their rightness as a semblance of stability within chaos. Yeah. And it doesn't help anyone. And it makes me think of that Rumi quote, out beyond the ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there's a field, I'll meet you there.
Yeah.
I really feel like collectively as a global population, we are being ushered into that field mm-hmm. very, very quickly. And the tectonic plates of what we knew to be true are shifting underneath us. And we can't try and position ourselves to hold on to what that other way of being and way of understanding ourselves in the context of the world used to be, or we're just going to be ripped to shreds. We've got to just go and not assume that we're going to get back anywhere, not assume that it's going to ever go back, and also not make that the goal, because is that the goal? Is it?
How can it be? That goal is dead.
Exactly.
That goal is dead.
It is no longer the is. Like, bye. Like, we're gonna have a different definition of it, and the more we can embrace that, the quicker and more gracefully we will be able to usher in what the next is. But it's only by being what the current is.
Totally. Okay, I'll tell you a quick story about what happened with my daughter this morning. This is so cute. So she came downstairs. She's 4. She dressed herself. She came on down. And then we're in the kitchen. And one of our kitchen drawers for probably about a year has been missing its little knob. So you have to open it by like reaching underneath the bottom and pulling it out from the edge. And the reason it's missing it is because they don't sell these knobs anymore. So we still have it, but the screw is like too short. So we can't get it to stay in. So we decided to just like keep it in the drawer and we'll deal with it when we have time. I think we will have time. I think I'll have time to do that now. But she said, I want to make a button and I want to put handles on everything. And I said, oh, you want to screw this back in? I'm like, I think we can work on that project now. And she said, no, I want a handle that is all over the house. I want handles all over the house. And I said, oh, what would that do for us? And she said, and then when you're scared, you can hold on to the handle and it helps you be loving instead of scared.
Whoa.
I'm like, thank you for telling me what you need and what I need.
Kids are incredible.
They are so incredible. Loving. She literally said that, loving, not scared. I don't really even, preach that stuff to her much. So I want to shift into a totally different topic.
Can I share one quick Atlas story from last night?
Totally.
That just made me think of just the intelligence of kids. I was putting him to bed. We were reading a book. And he's 3, but he is learning to memorize pages. So he's like, I can read. And he just remembers what the pages said. And we were reading this kid's book, and we got to the end and he was doing all of his memorized pages. And then instead of reading the last page, it was just the end, which he always knows to read. He said, if you love yourself, it doesn't matter. I was like, what did you just say? Which is something I'd been going through yesterday. Just like this whole spinoff of that whole, anyway.
Wow.
They're kids.
Jeez, how do they know?
They know.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to having you back on the show.
Thank you so much.
It was so great to be with you here today.
What a fantastic conversation. Thank you for all of your questions, and thank you for your brilliant mind and your soul. It's been an honor to be here.
Oh, you too, girl. You too. So since we're talking about soul, I'm going to tell one more kid story and then I promise I'll wrap up. Okay. So yesterday, Soren and Aero were talking about, for some reason, like scary things. I guess they were running away from our dog, and Soren said, pretend he's a monster. What's a monster? Blah, blah. They're talking about, let's see, ghosts. And then Soren starts talking about zombies. Aero says, what's a zombie? And Soren says, well, zombies and ghosts are opposite of each other. So a zombie has a zombie has a body. A ghost doesn't have a body. A ghost is just a soul. A zombie doesn't have a soul. It only has a purpose, which I thought was like fascinating way to see it. Zombie doesn't have a soul. It only has a purpose. And I said, yeah, but also, I'm like, also, Soren, there's a difference because, a zombie's like not alive and neither is a ghost. And he said, actually, Mom, he said, a ghost is a soul and we have a soul, and our soul is actually the only part of us that's alive.
Caneel. He said that?
Yeah. They're just, kids are amazing. Savor your kiddos. Listeners, yeah.
Wow. I'm gonna write that down. A zombie doesn't have a soul. It only has
It
a
has a
purpose, especially
purpose.
with like our society so bent on like, what's your purpose?
And
But
the
if it's a
zombie
soulless purpose,
companies
what
right
is
now
it?
that don't have souls and they just have a purpose of
Yeah.
increasing their value year over
Yeah.
year, and our zombie country of increasing its net, you know,
Yeah.
the need to increase the GDP. That's a purpose. That's not a
Mm-hmm.
soul.
Yeah.
So I love this thing of let's put our soul
Yes.
into our money. It's just
Yes.
energy.
It is.
Yeah.
And we can choose how we are with it, no matter how much we have.
Rad.
Yeah.
All right, girl. I'll see you next time.
Thank you
So much
so
for being
much.
here.
I'll talk to you soon.
Listeners, thank you for being here today. I really appreciate you showing up and being here with us in this fun conversation. Really would love to hear how you are doing. Wherever you are is exactly the right place to be. And so we want to be with your reality. We want to be together through this. So please come to join the Aloud Facebook community. You can find a link to that at caneel.com/podcast. I will also post details on how to get in touch with Christine and learn more about her Alchemy of Chaos program, which is launching probably a couple of days before this episode goes live, actually. And also about how to find out about the other cool things that she is up to. We're going to have show notes up there as well as links to a few resources for you. I hope you're all well. I hope you are all at ease. I hope that you are all healing, and I hope you're all being with the loving nature that is your truth. And we'll see you next week.